Welcome to the Archive Speaker Meeting. My name is Nick. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Nick.
Can we please have a moment of silence for the alcoholic who still suffers, followed by the Serenity Prayer? God,
grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
We ask that you please take a moment now to silence your cell phones out of respect for your fellows. And we will now pass the basket in honor of our seventh tradition, which states every AA group ought to be self-supporting, declining outside contributions. $15 will go towards rent of this meeting space, and the rest will go to District 17. The AA Preamble: Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And welcome to the Racine Archives Speaker Meeting, consistent with Alcoholics Anonymous General Service Archives mission. Our purpose is to document permanently the work of Alcoholics Anonymous, to make the history of the organization accessible to AA members and other researchers, and to provide a context for understanding AA's progression, principles, and traditions. Is there anyone here with less than 30 days of sobriety? And if there is, could you raise your hand? All right. Is there anyone here with more than 15 years of sobriety? Could you please raise your hand? Awesome. The speakers selected for this meeting are old-timers. An AA old-timer is any member who has been continuously sober for a significant period of time. The definition of significant is open to interpretation and varies widely. For the purpose of this meeting, an old-timer is considered anyone with 20 years or more of sobriety. The old-timers' interviews serve as a representation of the significant impact that long-term sobriety can have on our AA community. And without further ado, I will now introduce our speaker, Rebecca B. Alrighty, you ready for some questions, Rebecca?
Sure.
Sweet.
This is terrifying, you guys. Seems like a real big deal.
Okay, question, what is your sobriety date?
My sobriety date is October 24th of 2004.
Awesome. Who was the U.S. president when you joined AA?
George W. Bush. I had to look that up on the internet before I came here.
A lot of people say that. When and where was your first contact with AA?
Oh man, so my dad was sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. He got sober when I was 7. So, I mean, my first contact with AA was probably an AA dance I went to when I was 12. But my first contact with AA for myself, I did call my dad and say, you know, I'm in trouble with my drinking. I don't know what to do. What do I do? And he said, open the phone book, and there'll be a number, you know, close to the beginning. Call that number, and they will help you. And so I called what turned out to be the RACO hotline, and Cindy O answered the phone and told me that there was a beginners meeting on Thursday night, and that I should go to that meeting. It was I think it was a Wednesday that I called, and she said the beginners meeting was on Thursday. So.
Okay. Can you describe what Alcoholics Anonymous was like back then when you joined compared to today?
Man, I feel like, so I started, that first meeting I went to was at the Covenant, but the meetings that I regularly attended were here at the Grove Club. And it was such a smaller group. Meetings were 10 to 15 people, I want to say, very few women. It was not at all unusual for me to be the only woman in the meetings that I was at. Kelly H. was here and Roxanne D. was here. I mean, there were some other women, but they weren't like at the 10 a.m.s or the 4:30s that I felt like I was going to. It was a lot of what seemed at the time to me to be old men. They were probably 40, but at the time they seemed real old. No offense, some of them are here today.
What were you like as a newcomer, and
Oh,
how do
God.
you think others would describe you when you were a newcomer?
So I thought I was great, and pulling it off amazingly. But as I've said, some of those people that were in those meetings with me are here today, and they report that I was very crazy. I know that I was trying really hard. I know that I came to a ton of meetings. I tried really hard to like read the literature and to pay attention and to be a part of it. Like I really was trying to be like the people here. I wanted what they had. I really, really did. But I also know that I had like kind of a crazy on and off again boyfriend that like he and I were fighting back and forth around here. I know that I was like just probably full of drama everywhere. I know that I had a topic, I think at every meeting I went to. I was like, I have something to say. And I think, and the drama I think stayed with me for probably the first several years that I was sober. So I was probably pretty dramatic.
Who was your first sponsor, and how did you end up with them?
Oh, geez. So I had actually made an attempt to come to AA in 2001 and didn't stay sober after that attempt. I had been assigned a sponsor that I never called or did anything with in that experience. But then when I came back, I think Jerry M. was who I asked initially. But then I don't think I ever really like worked with her. So then my first like actual sponsor that I like called and worked the steps all the way through with and had like an ongoing relationship with was Elaine C. was her name. And she was great. And I don't remember the second half of your question, sorry.
No, I don't either. How did you end up with them?
So actually, at one point in the middle of all my like coming to meetings and drinking, I tried Celebrate Recovery, which is another fellowship that is more like Christian based that was meeting at my parents' church. And she went to those meetings. And when I said, I want to not drink, she said, well, I got sober in AA. So if these are great meetings, but you're going to have to go to AA meetings. So I met her there, but she brought me here, and she was a member here as well.
Okay. Who were the alcoholics prominent in your early sobriety?
Oh, man. So when I think about the women, I think about Roxanne, Mary T., Renee O., Jerry M., Stacy C., I guess it was at the time. And then, Mike K., Dave N., Mark C., John S., who was around everywhere, and I followed him everywhere. Sandy T. and I came around about the same time. Buddy C. came in at the same time as me. And then Linda L., who she had been in and out for years, but she came around more consistently when I had about 6 months. And she and I just became best friends and have been ever since. But there were a lot of people at the 430s here that just were amazing and changed my life. And Lee H., I can't forget Lee H., Mike S., we would sit down there and drink coffee. We'd get here at 3:30 every day and drink coffee and laugh for an hour and then come to the meeting and then go to Durango's for pizza. Sherry S. used to come to the Friday 5:30. There was a pretty good group of people who had Dave N., golfer, Fencer Dave N. also. Those were both big influences on my life. Yeah, a lot of good people.
Okay. Can you think of any AA catchphrases from back then that you don't hear anymore or don't hear as often today? And if so, what do they mean to you?
So there was a guy who I thought, his name was Boston Jack, and he was a big deal when I got sober too. He was here every day playing cribbage. Bud W. There was a group of guys that would play cribbage, and had nothing to do, so I would pour coffee for them while they would play cribbage. But Jack used to say, "I am the alcoholic. Nobody else needs to change. I need to change." And I loved that. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm hitting my microphone. Because I just thought my parents needed to change, and my boyfriend needed to change, and the police needed to change, and my boss needed to change, and I had all these complaints about how other people were treating me. And Jack would always bring it back to like, no man, you're the problem. You're the one that has the problem. You're the one that needs to change. And that was really helpful to me.
Okay. Did you get involved in service early on? And if so, what did you do?
I did. I chaired meetings right away. I was told to always have at least one service commitment, so I always did. I chaired meetings. I was on the board of the Grove Club, which I know is not AA service, but certainly felt like it at the time. I was the secretary. This is like the craziest thing. So I had warrants out when I got sober, and I wound up having to go to jail when I was 9 months sober. And I was a fiduciary member of the Grove Club while incarcerated. And I don't want to say anything incriminating, but I would attend the board meetings when I was supposed to be doing some other things, and it was a whole situation. But yeah, so I was involved in service right away. I got involved in district right away. And I did things like we would do the club cleanup days, and I made coffee for groups, and I poured coffee for the cribbage guys, and I didn't know what to do with myself, and people said, be helpful. And so I tried to do that, and I met a ton of people by doing that stuff. Was real involved in Tri-County for a long time as well.
Okay. What kind of events or sober social activities were there when you got sober?
So dances here at the Grove Club were a big deal, and I had loved dancing. I was a bar girl, so the fact that I could come here and dress up and dance was a big deal. There used to be an event at the zoo in Milwaukee that I would always go to, and they would bring a big speaker, circuit speaker in, and they'd have a nice dinner and a dance afterwards. That was important for me. The Green Lake Roundup, which still goes. The only year I've ever missed was the year I was on my honeymoon. We would go down, the Outcasts in Kenosha would do like a pig roast. There was, I remember, a talent show at the Kenosha Alano Club that was hilarious that we all went to. I mean, I did everything. I was alone and terrified and 29, and like, if you have something interesting for me to do, I will follow you to it and do it. And I had I remember at the, Clancy used to come every year. The Badger Intergroup would have a big event, and Clancy I would come speak. And that was where we started calling it the Boogie Awakening. Because us girls were all like, love to dance, but then you get sober and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so awkward, and like, what do I do with my hands and my feet, and like, But if you do it enough times, eventually you have this boogie awakening where it feels as natural and comfortable as it did when you were drinking. But you have to kind of, just like everything else in sobriety, you have to like do it a bunch to get good at it. So there was a little group of girls that we did a lot of dancing when I was new.
Okay. What was your first home group, and why did you decide to make it your home?
The Friday 5:30 at the Grove Club here was my first home group. I was a waitress, and so I had this varying schedule, and the Friday 5:30 seemed like it was just the meeting that I was always able to get to. Despite all the changes in my schedule, I was always able to be here at 5:30.
Okay. What do you remember most about the first time you sponsored someone?
The first person that I sponsored was Maggie W. And she was a lunatic, and she was, I think, drunk the whole first year that I sponsored her, which was awesome because I had no idea what I was doing, but she didn't care because she was doing what she was doing. And she was just, man, I chased her all over town, trying to like get her to do this, and she wound up just saving my life. Like she just was such a huge part of my life, and she was such an interesting girl. She was so smart and so interesting, and struggled for a long time and then stayed sober for a really long time. And through all of the chaos that wound up happening as I stayed sober, she just was like, none of that matters, you need to be here, and like me staying sober is what this is all about. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So yeah, that was my first experience with sponsorship, is I did it all wrong for a long time, and she loved me anyway, so that was really, really nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you remember about the first time you were sponsored?
Yeah, so again, it was Elaine. And Elaine just sort of ran my life, I think, for a little while, which I definitely needed. The thing that I loved, that attracted me to her, was she was the kind of woman that was like perfectly put together. Like her bag matched her shoes, and like her hair always looked great. And I just felt like I was such a mess in every area of my life and just like couldn't get anything together. And she just seemed like if I did the stuff that she suggested I do, like my life would get together. I remember blowing off a meeting that I had with her and then running into her at the speaker meeting and saying like, oh, I'm sorry, like I just, I forgot, or blah, blah, blah. And she was like, you are not sorry. If you were sorry, you wouldn't have done it. And I was like, and there were people around, and I was like really like felt very attacked and afraid and scared. And thank goodness, because I was like, I needed to be afraid enough to be willing to do the stuff that she was telling me to do. If I had been able to push her around the way I had been pushing everybody in my life around, I think I probably would have drank again. But she was like, either do what I'm asking you to do or stop screwing around. And that intimidated me and made me like willing to do some stuff I wouldn't have done otherwise.
All right. What is prayer to you, and what are your prayer habits like?
Oh, I'm so glad that I'm doing this right now and not 6 months ago. So the whole higher power thing has always been such a back and forth idea for me. I grew up in like this fundamentalist, born again Christian family, and I had a lot of resentment and resistance to that kind of traditional, like religious idea. But I knew that what you guys were doing worked, and you guys told me that I needed to pray. And Elaine would say things like, is there some physical limitation that makes you not able to get on your knees? And no, there wasn't. Is there some reason you can't say the word please with your mouth? And I'd say, and there wasn't. So she's like, so get on your knees and say please. And I'm like, ugh. She's like, I don't care who answers you. I don't care who you think you're talking to. You can talk to nobody. You can just say that word out loud. And I'm like, okay. So I did that. Over the years, I have had friends invite me to pray with them. I have had partners invite me to pray with them. I have participated in prayer at meetings. It has changed over the years, but it is the single thing that AA asks me to do that I am the worst at, by far. I'm better at service. I'm better at meeting attendance. I'm better at telling the truth. I'm better at meditation. I'm better at answering the phone. I'm better at calling people, and I'm pretty bad at calling people, but I'm really bad at praying. But I've kind of been in a weird place where I feel like I've been very off the beam. And for the last month or so, I've been praying the resentment prayer from Freedom from Bondage, that story, for a couple people at work and a couple other people in my life. So right now, every morning I do the 3rd and 7th step prayer, and then I pray the resentment prayer, where I ask for everything that I want for myself to be given to these people. And I feel so much more connected and so much more on the beam as a result of just changing that action than anything else I've done in a really long time.
Okay. Last question before we go on break. Do you meditate, and if so, how? I
do meditate. Meditation was a thing that I thought was really weird. Again, I grew up in a weird family where that like meditation was how the demons get in, I'm not kidding, one of the things that I heard growing up. So that was weird, but then I was willing to read like meditation books, so I did that. And then I had a friend that invited me to do some Zen, like Buddhist meditation, where we got like a robe and like we bowed, and that I thought was a really cool experience. Over the years, I've tried a million different things of meditation, guided meditations, breathing exercises. Currently, I've been doing some Ram Dass guided meditation stuff. And my husband and I, because AA is good and life is good, have been able to get a sauna and a cold plunge in our yard. So now I've been doing a lot of like being out at night in the like dark and looking at the sky and the stars and the moon and having like this like sauna and cold plunge and Ram Dass music, like meditation that's been really, really interesting. So I'm open to stuff.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that is all the questions we have. Thank you for answering them. We are going to go on a 10-minute break and then come back, and Rebecca will share her experience, strength, and hope on a passage from the Big Book. So, 10-minute break.
Thanks, Nick.
All right, we're going to welcome back Rebecca B., and she is going to share her experience, strength, and hope on a passage from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Hi everybody, I'm Rebecca and I'm an alcoholic. So I have not done this before, so we'll see how this goes. I was all ready to talk about a certain page, and then I'm in a Big Book study with Nick, and he's like, every page is your favorite page. What are you going to talk about? And I was like, oh my God, you're right. There are so many good pages. So I'll just say, if you are not a part of a Big Book study, get into a Big Book study. I always try and have that be part of my program, and it's like such a really cool way to experience the Big Book. I think that the answer is in the book, the solution is in the book, and there are so many little phrases that just stick with me and pop into my head when I'm in the middle of craziness that I don't think would be there if I hadn't been like routinely reading this over and over and over again forever. So anyway, all of that aside, I am going to read from page 85. I'm going to start at the bottom of page 84. These are the 10th step promises. Every step in the book has promises associated with it. We talk a lot about the 9th step promises, but these ones are actually my favorite. Because when I came here, the only thing that I came here for was to stop drinking. I didn't care about like making friends and having a life and whatever. That seemed impossible to me. But I really needed to not drink the way that I was drinking. And I couldn't figure out how to do that. So when I came here and I read these promises, I was like, yeah, man, this is the stuff that I came here for. Freedom from financial insecurity was way beyond anything I was hoping for when I got here. But this talked about not drinking. So at the bottom of page 84, it says, "And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time, sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. So for me, and I was somebody that was either drinking or thinking about drinking and could not imagine a life where that wasn't my like minute to minute experience, this idea that like that was gonna go away, that I could come here and do some things and like at some point a miracle was gonna happen and I was gonna live comfortably in my own skin without having to take a drink and without like white knuckling my way through like the minutes and hours, like that was what I wanted. When so my dad was in AA, as I mentioned earlier, and like he's the one that kind of pointed this out to me, but he also said like you'll hear people in meetings say like stick around until the miracle happens. And I don't know if we say that as much as we used to, but stick around until the miracle happens. Unfortunately, the miracle happens on page 85 after you do step 10. It doesn't happen on day 8 or 5 or after you do step 1.5. Like you have to come here and do this stuff. And the other thing I really like about this page is that it's like you have to continue. I've been having some conversations with one of my friends who's a little newer in the program than I am, and I and she both have this idea that like I'm gonna do something and it's gonna be like done, like I am gonna have arrived somewhere. And like that's not what we get in AA, right? We get this daily reprieve every day, constantly. We're gonna try and practice this stuff. We're gonna have a new opportunity to do it. We're gonna pray today. We're gonna meditate today. We're gonna go to the meeting today. We're gonna be nice to somebody today. We're gonna be of service today. And that's gonna keep us sober today. But that is not gonna do anything for us tomorrow. And so tomorrow I'm gonna have to wake up and I'm gonna have to do all of that same stuff again. And my experience has been when I stop doing that stuff, I pretty quickly get pretty sick. And I start to think, like, alcohol isn't my problem, AA isn't my problem, my relationship with God isn't my problem, you are my problem. You know, my husband's my problem, my job's my problem, the, you know, decor in my house is my problem, my paycheck is my problem, the police are my problem, the people who talk in the meetings are the problem, you know, the guy driving in front of me is the problem. All of a sudden I've got a lot of problems and I'm like, what has happened to me? Like everybody, and this is bad language, but you know, if you wake up and you've met 3 assholes by 10 a.m., you're probably the asshole. That was the thing my dad used to tell me. And like, I'll tell you, for the last year, there have been a lot of assholes in my life. And I think people, and I've been coming to AA, because that's the other thing. So I've been here for 20 years, and I have not ever gone to fewer than 3 meetings a week. I probably went to a meeting every single day for the first 7 years I was sober. I came here a ton. Some of that was to avoid responsibilities in my life that isn't recommended, but it was what I was doing. But I think the thing that has saved my life is that I've been here, so that when I realize like something's wrong, man, I am off the beam, everybody is irritating me, stuff is not right, I hate my job, I hate my marriage, I hate my house, I hate my kids, you know, I hate whatever. There have been people who probably for a while have been saying, how you doing? You know, how's your prayer life going? Are you meditating? When's the last time you called your sponsor? Are you sponsoring anybody? Like, how's that going? And I'm going, it's fine, I'm fine. If they would just get their lives together, we'd all be happy. And they're like, okay. How about, you know, and like I was talking about the resentment prayer, and I talked about my friend Linda earlier, and I see her all the time, and she's been going, are you resentful? And I'm like, I'm not resentful, they're wrong. And she's like, okay, are you praying for them? And I'm like, no, I'm not resentful, they're wrong. Like, praying for them isn't gonna help. They're just wrong, they just need to know that I'm right, and then we'll all be happy. Because the only problem I've ever had is that you guys don't do it right. But, you know, I keep getting like more and more off the beam, angrier and angrier, more and more resentful, though I don't know it's happening. But when I'm here and I'm connected, I have people who love me who are saying the same things over and over and over and over again. And sometimes I can hear it, or suddenly I can hear it. And when that happens, then I'm able to take some different action. And when I take that different action, I start to get those different results. So like, I love this, man. I come here, I take these actions. It does say like that the miracle will happen without any thought or effort on our part, which I feel like is kind of a con, because by step 10, I've done a lot of thinking and made a lot of effort. But I think it's like going to sleep, you know? I can have the room dark and I can lay down in the bed, but I can't make myself fall asleep. It's a thing that just comes. So I come here, I work the steps, I do the stuff that people in AA ask me to do, I make the environment appropriate, and then the miracle just comes. And one day I wake up and I realize, man, I haven't thought about a drink in a really long time. I wonder when that happened. I wonder how that happened. Like, that is, for somebody like me, that's all my life was about, that is a miracle. And it just came for me. And then the other thing I really love about this is at the end, it talks about we can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. Because I think sometimes will gets a bad rap in AA. We talk about like self-will versus God's will, or like I'm running my own show, or like my willpower is what's killing me here. And I don't think that that's true. I think that God gave us willpower. He gave us energy and effort. And like the problem is that I use it incorrectly. The 12 and 12 talks about that, the misuse of the will. I try and bombard my problems with it, you know? So when I think it's my job, I start being real weird at work, and I start talking smack about people behind their backs, and I start complaining about what I'm getting paid, and I start complaining about the assignment that I have, and I start refusing to help my coworkers because they're always trying to screw me, and why am I helping them? I'm trying to like use my will to manipulate that situation, when what I should be doing is using my will to remind myself to pray before I walk into work, and use my will to close my mouth when I am tempted to gossip about my coworkers. And I don't know about you guys, but that feels like an extraordinary effort of will for me a lot of the time. Like, oh my gosh, just don't say anything when you walk into that room. But it's hard, and that's what I'm supposed to be using my will for. You know, at home, I am not supposed to be using my will to try and manipulate my husband into, unloading the dishwasher the way I think it should be unloaded. I should be using my will to unload the dishwasher, and then I don't have to be resentful that the dishes aren't unloaded. But it's like so contrary to like what I want to do. My first instinct when I'm disturbed always is that it's your fault and you're doing it wrong. And my second instinct after that is to use my will to try and make you be different. But just like Boston Jack said to me when I was new, like, I am the alcoholic. I am the one with the problem. I am the one that needs to change. The other thing I think that AA talks about a lot in this line is the serenity prayer, right? I accept the things I can't change, which is everybody else, how they think, how they feel, what they do, and I change the things I can, which is me and my actions and my behavior and my thoughts and the stuff that I'm, like the three-dimensional actions I'm taking in the world. And when I can do that stuff, my life just gets so much easier. I still have like a ton of time. So I'm gonna say one more thing, and then I think I might be done. But there's this line that says, every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. And me and Linda used to joke about that a lot. Like, every day, today, when is my break, right? At our young people's meeting, which is now my home group, we do this thing where we say, we give a coin for continuous sobriety. And there's always this joke about like, oh no, consecutive. What does consecutive mean? And we're like, every day, one after the other, no breaks, no holidays, no naps. And we're like, naps, we love naps. We do get to have naps. But like, every day, I don't get a break. I don't get a weekend. I don't get a holiday. Every day is the day that I carry the vision of God's will for me into my life, not my vision of what my life is supposed to look like. And I'll tell you, to this day, I wake up every day with a vision for how it should go. It's mostly not about what I need to do. It's mostly about what you do. But every day I wake up with that vision. And if I can remember, like, it's not my vision, not my life, God's vision. Who does God want me to be today? Who does God want me to be in my house? And when I can remember that, I set up the coffee the night before so that Ted doesn't have to make it when he wakes up in the morning. I unload the dishwasher. I wipe down the counter. I pay the bill on time. I go to work on time. I ask, what can I do to be helpful? I say, yeah, of course I'll take that assignment, no problem. When I see a patient, I'm like, hey, how are you doing today? You must be really afraid. How can I help you? When I drive, I stay in the lane that I'm in, and I don't like ride up on people and flip around them and try and get to where I'm going because you're in my way and my stuff's more important than your stuff. I don't count the number of items in the 10-item grocery line for the person in front of me. You know, when the meeting is going long, I just take some deep breaths and say a quick God help me prayer instead of, there's so many ways, and it's all these like tiny little irritations throughout the day that I have the opportunity to say, like, what is God's vision for me in this moment? Am I constantly trying to do that, or am I constantly trying to have it my way? And that is an effort of will over and over and over and over again. And some of that stuff gets easier, and there are things that used to make me insane when I was a year sober that just don't even bother me anymore. And now there are some things that make me insane that I probably didn't even have that area when I was a year sober. I would have been thrilled to have a job that I got to go to every day when I was new. So like it changes, but I think that idea that this is like this daily practice that I'm gonna get better at and that I'm gonna use my effort to get better at is, I think, like the idea of continuous sobriety for me. So I don't know, I didn't talk for very long, but I think that that's all I've got on this page. So I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak. Thank you, Sam, for asking me. Thank you, Nick, for hosting. Thank you, Alex and Neil, for doing the sound. And I am just so grateful to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and for every one of you that has just made it possible for me to stay here. So that's all I've got. Thanks.